It's a delight and an honor to welcome Charlotte Moss and Margot Shaw, who will be in conversation this afternoon to talk about Charlotte's new book, Charlotte Moss Flowers. I'm going to just hold it up. I know you saw a split screen, but I hope you can tell it's a beautiful, beautiful book. This is Rizzoli, so you sort of expect that, but I think they and Charlotte have really outdone themselves this time. The photographs are gorgeous of gardens and flower arrangements and interiors, but also it's informative and it's inspirational. This is Charlotte really sharing her life and how she trusts her own instincts and stays open-minded about flowers, how she studies books and gardens and paintings, which tastemakers she's most drawn to, and most of all, really about the joy and comfort and the passion that come from her life with flowers. So I can't recommend it highly. And I have to say it's a book for everyone's library, everyone's coffee table, for gift giving, and especially great for Mother's Day. And so to echo what Patty said, we hope that you'll order from BookHampton, RJ Joy, or Wesleyan. We are happy. We've got signed book plates. We're happy to wrap. We're happy to send. But it's a wonderful, wonderful book, and we couldn't be more excited. So quickly about Charlotte and about Margot, and then we'll get started. So Charlotte, as so many of you know, is a designer and author and a philanthropist. She's designed numerous private residences in the United States and abroad, in addition to collections of carpets, furniture, fabrics, china, and enamel jewelry. She's authored 10 books. Most recently, just before this, in 2018, Charlotte Moss Entertains, and she lectures internationally on the art of living and is consistently featured in the top lifestyle and design publications. And Margot Shaw is a longtime friend of BookHampton's. We saw her a few years ago in person in the store when she was up to talk about her new book at the time, Living Floral, Entertaining and Decorating with Flowers. We had, excuse me, the pleasure to host her then, and I couldn't be personally more pleased than to welcome her back today and to be in conversation with her good friend, Charlotte. Margot is the founder and editor-in-chief of Flower Magazine, which is now in its 13th year. It's grown to include features on homes, gardens, entertaining, and lifestyle. She's a sought-after speaker at antique and garden shows, museums, botanical gardens, interior design centers, and more. And again, Margot, welcome back to you, even though you're on a Zoom. So with that, I welcome both of you. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing Charlotte's new book with us. And Margot, I'll hand it over to you.
Carolyn, thank you so much.
Thank you, Carolyn,
for having us virtually. And I too am very disappointed to not be able to hug your neck and go through all your fabulous books, but very grateful to be here. It's the next best thing. I'm also very grateful and honored to be able to discuss a book that it's not my new favorite. It may be one of my all-time favorites. I read a lot of books. I don't always read a lot of design books, coffee table books. I will look at them, and if something piques my interest, this book, I sat down and read it stem to stern, not dutifully. I pored over it. I was enchanted, inspired, educated. I mean, I know I'm gushing, but I cannot recommend this book highly enough. It's
okay, Margot, gush, okay. It's okay.
Gushing a little bit more. It's all things that we love, probably most of us who are tuning in. And so I'm going to just ask Charlotte to get started telling us about the genesis of this book. We all know you as the great interior decorator, and I know we don't like that word so much, tastemaker, but you really are, and an inspiration to so many. But so flowers, talk about the beginning of this and how it took shape.
Well, you know, so many times when you sort of sit around and scratch your head and say, what's the next book? you think about from this point forward, how do we craft it? How do we photograph it? And what I realized was that I had thousands of photographs of flower arrangements that I'd taken for the house over a really, really long period of time. And boy, I could really tell how they got a little bit better over that period of time. But I just thought that that would be a great way to express what I do at home. And not just, about me, but about how to make flowers accessible, how to take the fear factor out, how people, some people do fear making flower arrangements. And when I looked at all the photos, they really came down to categories like that single blossom, and then that arrangement that is about a single type of flower, and then arrangements, and then just leaves. So they sort of categorize themselves and chapterize the book, all on its own. So it really came about because those photos existed. And it was, how to wrap the words in between.
Mm-hmm. Well, you did a beautiful job of that as well. I think one of the things that I so admire about you and your life and your work is that you're always learning. And that is a takeaway for me from just knowing you, is that you're a voracious reader, you travel, you are always learning. And so when I look at this book, I don't see the progression. I think that all the arrangements are really great, but I wonder, when you started arranging flowers, was there a book like this out there? What were your sources, or just organic?
I have so many books, Margot, just like you. We all have so many books, and there's so many brilliant ones out there that really can guide you through the process of, what flowers to get and how, how to condition them, and, all those tips. I didn't want this to be that book because there's so many good ones out there. I just wanted this to be a book that says, look, this is what I've done. Sometimes we call in a pro, but for the most part, we just want to be at home and do our own thing, and to make people, comfortable with that. I'm a visual person. My father gave me some of the best decorating advice in life when I was young, and boy, have I learned in spades how important it was. And, he was a colonel that knew nothing about decorating, but he said, observe, observe, observe. It doesn't cost a dime. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's, how I've sort of guided my life, is watching others, reading, learning, looking for things, figuring out how to do things better, prettier, more beautiful. And I feel so fortunate to be in a business where people actually pay me to do that. Don't tell anybody. I mean, it's fabulous, but people pay me to do that. And I feel very, very fortunate that I can.
Like we would pay you, or you would pay us to get to do it. And yet here you are profiting from it. It's a miracle. It's wonderful.
It is a miracle.
No, I don't mean your work, but I just mean we have so much fun doing what we do, and to be paid for it, it's lovely. It's lovely. So, speaking of the book, if you were going to have one message for all of us readers from this book, what would it be? What's the takeaway? I mean, there are lots of them, but just still.
Just relax and have at it. Give it a go, try it, experiment. It's your own home. There's no audience out there watching you do anything. You can embarrass yourself at home, and that's just fine. But, over time, you just learn to get better at it. And that's why I think when this book sort of naturally chapterized itself with those single flower arrangements, whether it was a bunch of sweet peas or a bunch of marigolds, that is what I call, how to be a flower arranging success story, because it's just one flower. It's about tidying them up more than it is about arranging them. So you walk before you run. It's like anything, when you're riding a bike. First you had the training wheels, and then you did it on your own with two.
I agree with you about the single bloom. I have some wild phlox back here in one of my Jamie Freiberg containers, and I just snipped them out of the garden and literally plopped them in there. And I could do a big English arrangement with mixed blooms, but it wouldn't be any prettier than that.
Yeah, I just think you have to learn how to be satisfied with what you have and how you do it, and not to make yourself miserable trying to measure yourself against someone else or some other book or some other thing or whatever. Look, I know so many incredible event people who started out just arranging flowers. Then they started doing events, and then it turned into mega event business. They all started somewhere. Everybody in every business starts somewhere. So you just have to, sort of acknowledge that to yourself.
I love that. It's more of your giving us permission to be who and where we are, which is a big, for me, it's a big takeaway from your book and from you. Speaking of acknowledge your humble beginnings, can you, when I read this book and I read about your childhood, I told you this, I had a movie playing in my mind of your flower and beauty-filled childhood. Can you share a little bit about that?
Oh, you mean the flower memories part of the book?
Yeah, just a few.
You know, I was under pressure, truth be told. And I was writing, and then all of a sudden, just, you know how when you start and you just get flow and you go, and all of these flower memories just started bubbling to the surface. And, you know, I started thinking about all those wonderful, pleasant moments of, you know, being with my mother and my grandmother, you know, all the things we experience in life that revolve around flowers, that big corsage that you praised wasn't going to be a monstrosity on your prom dress, you know, all of those moments. Was your bouquet when you got married perfect and the best that's ever been done? I mean, I think we do have a little bit of flower anxiety. But that was a really fun thing for me because it took me back to a lot of very pleasant times. And then there were other times, like I referenced about the boys on Wall Street that,
Tell that story, please.
Oh my gosh. You
no,
know,
no names, just.
Oh, no names. I got an office, and it was this wonderful, my first office, and didn't have any windows, so it needed to be special. And I just went out and bought some great baskets to put in my office for my in basket, out basket. And I bought a very simple vase and put some flowers on my desk. 2 stockbrokers come in and said, you know, well, you know, not for nothing, but really, you know, people aren't going to take you very seriously now because you've got flowers on your desk. And I just sat there in disbelief and I stared at them. And I'm sure I may have, you know, been a few expletives or something, but it just reminded me of how people view certain things. Like that was a fluffy moment to them. And that I couldn't go out and talk about tax shelters with Arthur Anderson, you know, an hour later because I had flowers on my desk. It's like it didn't, you know. Anyway, that was the only negative flower experience in my life, but it was a part of the learning curve. I will say that.
I bet they went home and told their wives about your flowers.
Oh, and you know what? And I felt sorry for those wives. All I could think was, I don't have to go home with those, you know, those guys. Can you imagine? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little compartmentalized, a little provincial, but flowers, and when I think about that office and I visualize that office with no window, almost a cubicle, but just gray walls, probably pretty ugly furniture. And in you come with these great looking baskets and flowers from the flower shop or the bodega or whatever, which I'm sure for you transformed your environment.
It totally transformed it.
And
so that's a very important message. That's a very important message, I think, that also comes through, I hope, in the book, is that little teeny bouquet, that single blossom can really be transformative, not just so much in terms of that tabletop, but I think in terms of your attitude, about making it prettier and doing something for yourself. I think that's really important, that you do something like that for yourself. And when you can do it just for yourself and not worry about other people, I think you just become free. You just become free to do what you bloody well please. And that's a threshold moment, I think, for a lot of people.
It is. And you know, we're girls from the South, and flowering is very big down here. So it can get a little intimidating when the generation before us is seeing our work. So yes, it's about portraying ourselves, our style, and you do that beautifully. Speaking of that, I remember a quote in the book from Elsie DeWolf. Do you know the one I'm going to talk about?
And a woman's life, a woman's home will speak for her life.
A woman's environment will speak for her life, whether she likes it or not. A house is a dead giveaway.
Amen.
So here's my question. When your environment speaks for your life, what does it say? House and garden.
Well, first, let me answer how Elsie intended that. I think, okay, so, you know, she was long gone before I was around. So I think Albert Hadley, actually, I remember a quote from Albert Hadley that takes this a step further. And that he said he didn't really care about how people decorated. To look at their housekeeping first. Housekeeping is the most important thing, because anyone can have good housekeeping. And it doesn't matter if your curtains are silk or cotton. None of that matters. It's the housekeeping. So I think that's what Elsie meant. And, you know, because she was such a keen observer, that she could tell when people really cared, you know, when they really cared about their environment. And I think that how you care about yourself really shows through your home. And yeah, I mean, it's housekeeping, really, way before the decorating.
Okay. That was a cagey evasion.
Okay. Okay. So part two. What's part two?
Part two is when people, let me read it literally here verbatim. When your environment speaks for your life, what does it say? And I'm including the garden as well as your house.
You know, I think it goes back to one of the themes in the book is about accessibility. It's about being welcoming. I would like to think that people would think it's comfortably elegant, much more relaxed in the country than it is in the city. But I think inviting and accessible and shoulder dropping, that's what I want my rooms to say to people.
Mm-hmm. And the garden?
Same, because it's little spaces everywhere with little hidden benches. And, you know, I've created little spots where you can go and escape and no one can actually see you. And so that's invitation as well. I think it's, I don't know, it's that Southern hospitality gene, honey, you know?
That's right.
It just carries through into everything you do.
Well, your house and garden, to my mind, both have those moments where we can go and have an intimate conversation. We can gaze out, see beauty everywhere, even right in front of us. Or you have some, they're not grand, but you have some bigger spaces where you can have more than a few people. You have, but everywhere you look, it's beauty. And we've talked about the significance of that for a while, but you are surrounded by beauty. And I would like for you to just maybe comment a little bit about that. Of course, it's so subjective, but I remember hearing someone who started doing flowers, and her mother was very serious, and she was supposed to be an opera singer, and she loved flowers, and her mother said, she was afraid that her mother would say it was frivolous. And her mother said, no, darling, Beauty Matters. So she went, and it's somebody you know now that is a famous floral designer. But so just can you speak a little bit to that in your experience of beauty and being surrounded?
I let me just say this: beauty matters to me.
Mhm.
I hope it matters to other people. I can't speak for them. I think beauty is important. Like I said, I'm a very visual person, and I think I want to be surrounded with beautiful things. And, we all have a different definition. And it can be simple, it can be complex, it can be luxurious, it can be so many things. But, I think in the end, beauty can be simplicity. And again, it goes back to that housekeeping thing. Just a simple, beautiful house, nice and tidy and clean, is a beautiful thing, because it's an expression of that person.
And it's care.
It's care. Okay, so I know we've talked about this before, and anyone that's ever heard me lecture has certainly heard this. But years ago, when I was in London and stuck in traffic on the Gloucester Road, and I had just come from a big shopping afternoon on the King's Road and all my favorite shops, and I was sitting there in the cab, and we're stuck. And this was before devices, so I just started looking around, and I looked up on this big Victorian red brick building, and on the windowsill outside were 5 Perrier bottles, and each one had a tulip. And that it like blew me back, because it was such an expression of someone's idea of beauty, someone trying to make it pretty. Hopefully those Perrier bottles ended up in the recycling bin, or they just continue to be used as vases today, whatever it is. But it was someone that just took 5 tulips and put them in some Perrier bottles. And it really made an impression on me about just how simple it can be, but you just have to want to do it, And now look at all the women that are in the book, the flower muses, I call them, but they were all women that we know of. Colette, an incredible writer, and Constance Spry, who put the world on fire with how she did things. They all learned by doing it. They weren't professionals. They didn't have training. They just wanted to be surrounded by beauty and found a way to create their own world with it. But there are lessons from every one of those women. And that's why I'm always including women in my books, entertains and garden inspirations. They all have women. I'm a big fan and sponsor of women and their talent. But in this case, these are women that really achieved a lot in their various areas, and they learned how to do this all on their own. And I think that is the great takeaway from all of that your life can be perceived as being grand and glorious on the outside, but deep down inside, Karen Blixen was going out in her garden with her Wellington boots in her nightgown, cutting flowers before the sun came out, putting them in buckets and going back to bed so she could arrange them later and then go deliver them to friends and put them around the house. I love those kind of real life stories. If that isn't enough encouragement to make people want to go out and buy some and give it a go, I'm a monkey's uncle. I don't know what else to do. I wrote the book. Go do it.
Yes, go do it. Charlotte Moss, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that was one of the things that I found so intriguing when I went back through the book, and I'm always looking for pattern, like the repetition of the Perrier bottles and the tulips. Pattern is important. Repetition is impactful. And the way the book is laid out is so easy, accessible. It's so teaching, but it's also so exotic with these women. I am so inspired by learning more about these women, every facet, but of course, especially the florals. the florals that they conceived reflect the philosophy that you've included. And it's so educational and inspirational. So of those muses, Charlotte, who can you say your favorite?
Oh gosh, no, they're all so unique in their own way, you know, and the reason for putting them in is for inspiration and to educate and hopefully to provide a catalyst to people to go do the same. I mean, if I had to say one, to be able to write like Colette would in my dreams, you know, I love to write. It pushes me. I learn from it. I just enjoy it intellectually, but to be able to write like that, oh, yeah, I'd do that in a heartbeat.
I just ordered her book, Flowers and Fruit.
Flowers and Fruit. You're going to love it.
Uh-huh. I can't wait. I remember one of the things that stood out in the book was the conversation. She's anthropomorphized a gardenia. And the gardenia is very proud and is sort of blowing off the lowly tuberose and saying, you know, I'm so grand, and it doesn't turn night until I say it turns night.
Right.
And then the gardenia says, but 3 days after I bloom, I look like a white kid glove.
A kid glove thrown to the curb. Oh,
say it all.
I know it says it.
If that doesn't say it, it's exquisite. It's exquisite. Well, your writing, by the way, I'm sure I've told you this as I gushed other times, but your writing in this book is very rich. It's just a stew of great words and observations and quotes from other people. I did want to talk to you a little bit about just some of the things that you've learned. Like, let's take a Bunny Mellon, who honestly, I thought you were going to say her, but then I thought you were going to say Nancy Lancaster, and then I thought, well, she loves all of them, so she's not going to say pictures.
Well, they're different messages and different lessons from each one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, was that your question?
That was, I don't know. That was an aside. How about that?
Oh, okay.
An aside.
well, let me just take that aside a step further then, because, you know, Bunny Mellon had all the money she wanted in the world, and the things she loved the most to put her flowers in were baskets. She had a great collection. You know, she, did so many things herself, working in the garden. And, Pauline de Rothschild, they'd bring the books to her of the china, and she would select the service for the evening, but she would go out in the field with some of her staff, and they would collect moss and branches and do these incredible tablescapes right down the middle of the table. It's like the field was interpreted down the center of her table. That was before anyone ever thought of doing anything like that. And people, at first thought she was a little strange, and then everyone understood. Mm-hmm. Nancy was all about candlelight, a fire, and flowers. And those were her essentials. Mm-hmm. You pick up something from everyone. Mm-hmm. And you could go on. I mean, Constance Spry, just devil may care attitude. She didn't care what anybody thought. She went into the woods, wild and woolly, the better. Mm-hmm. And then she ended up doing the coronation. I mean,
I love what you said about that, though, about the thing that we remember is the coronation chicken recipe.
Yeah.
That she.
Yeah.
But also, I want to remind you, speaking of that, there's a quote from you in the book about a dinner party where I think there were two chairs, 6 feet tall, full of roses.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
In Paris.
I can almost put myself there in this moment. I mean, this was an amazing house in Paris. And we were going into cocktails. And we came around a corner and walked down some steps into this room where we were having drinks. And I could smell, it was like somebody had sprayed the most like garden roses, a fragrance with garden roses. And we came around the corner, and there on these two skirted tables, right and left, were these big baskets with rose bushes like 6 feet high that were, including the basket, but tied up with bamboo and exploding with blossoms. It was the most seductive, romantic. I mean, I can't remember anything that I've seen like that besides those wonderful little strawberries I saw at Shenandoah that were tied up like the fraise du bois, that were tied up like espalier. I mean, it's just a 6 foot high rose bush in the middle of the drawing room. It was fantastic. But so there, you didn't even have to arrange anything. All you had to do is go to the nursery, put it in a basket, tie it up with bamboo and raffia, and go to town.
But I loved what you said about that you didn't remember any dinner partners or dinner conversation, but you sure did remember those flowers.
I can't, and there was a lot of really interesting people at that dinner. I cannot tell you the gentleman on my right, my left, no conversations. All I could think about were those big, fat roses hanging on that shrub. Oh,
well, you certainly have big, fat, beautiful roses in your garden. So, and as I've walked through, I've been inspired, and the fragrance is intoxicating. So I'm glad that you're surrounding yourself still with those beautiful blooms. Charlotte, I think we are going to have to stop in a minute, but I wanted to comment on this and just tell people something that stood out to me, and that I'm going to carry with me always. And first of all, you talk about vases and containers. And one of the things that you say about that is that you don't ever just say, oh, I think I'll go out and buy a container. That they're found along the way, or they're repurposed, right? I mean, look behind.
Oh, I think they find you sometimes, I mean, I've been collecting them for a long time, and so many different types of things get used to hold flowers. But yeah, I don't think you say, let's go vase shopping today.
I've never said that in my life.
Although I will say I did that one time for a friend, that I went to his house and he said, Charlotte, I really don't have any great vases. I said, see you later. And I went out and bought some vases, and then I did his flowers. I think that they just find you. And then when it comes to putting the flowers in them, I think people need to understand how to let the flowers talk. I mean, how many times have you picked a bunch of pansies? You can't arrange pansies. They just do what the heck they want. So you have to tie them up a little bit, put them in a little teeny vase, and let them just splay out. Today I was arranging flowers. I thought I was going to shoot myself. I mean, you can have a bad day, a bad hair day, or you can have a bad flower day. Today, the hyacinths smelled beautiful, but they stood up straight and they just sort of bored me. And then the roses they're very accommodating. They do it exactly what you want. But then the viburnum flopped those little green heads. This one went this way. This one went that way. Tulips did the same. It was like a group of recalcitrant kindergartners. And I just couldn't arrange those darn flowers today to make me happy. But anyway,
put them in the
what's
time there.
Every moment is a challenge. And that was my biggest flower challenge recently.
Well, yeah. I know that you rose to it, as you always do. Charlotte, the quote that I just want to leave people with is about vases. And you said that vases are a sign of hope, of beauty. And so that they are going to be, there's potential there. In other words, I guess.
They're just waiting for you.
Yeah.
They're just waiting for you.
I guess that's what I just love that. And we need hope. And so with that, I'm just going to ask, who is it? Carolyn? Who's bringing the questions? Patty. I think we've got some questions from the audience, and we're going to take those for Charlotte.
Great. We have some beautiful questions, actually, and one just dovetails perfectly what you just talked about, which is, do you think that we all or will have a better sense of beauty and more appreciation for beauty? I know certainly personally I do after lockdown. And if you notice that shift more since lockdown and now sort of the rebirth and the reopening, which I think is a lovely question.
I think people, yes. I think we have become more aware of the things around us in our immediate world. You know, I mean, in my case, in case of so many people, you get up in the morning, you go to work, you're out all day, then you come back. Now we've had this opportunity to be here 24/7. And our definition of beauty, I think, has, like so many things, recalibrated itself. And it's become about the simpler things. And I'm so grateful for that, personally and across the board.
Agree. Here's another question. What do you think of Mother's Day tradition of a corsage, white or yellow roses if your mother has passed, pink or red if your mother is with us? Do you celebrate this way? Is there another holiday where a particular flower defines the holiday for you?
No, I think it's the seasons that define, you know, when I think about flowers, it's what's available, you know, what's available at Christmas time and how do you make the most of it? And, you know, making the most of rose season and then tulips in the spring. I just think about things that are available in the season and try to use them as much as I can.
Okay, that makes sense. Here's another question. You find inspiration from so many areas in your life. Is there an artist or painter that inspires you more
Oh,
one
gosh.
than the other?
Gosh, I guess it depends on what it is, really. You know, there's so many painters. And, you know, to say that you love Matisse, it's like, yeah, okay, so does millions of other people. But I do love Matisse. I love the playfulness. I like the youth in his paintings. I love the explosions of color. And I like the way he drew women, even his pencil sketches. But I really would have to say, yeah, that's one of my favorites. That's a tough question. Just doing one is impossible.
And that's a good question. It makes you think about all the different artists. And
it certainly does.
Definitely does. And it's so subjective and it's so about your mood. This one, let's see. Jen asks, if you could only visit one garden or botanical garden for inspiration, where would it be and why?
I love botanical gardens, and I really think there's no place like the New York Botanical Garden. I mean, it's an incredibly special place, not just year round with the permanent collection there inside and out, but also the special exhibitions that they always have. But, oh gosh, you know, there are just some gardens you can get lost in for their formality and others you get lost in for their flowers. I wouldn't, you know, as I love the charm and the intimacy of the gardens at Bagatelle in Paris, because there's an iris garden, then there's the rose garden where they have the famous trials, and then there's the landscape garden. So there's such a mix there. But I think if I had to encourage anyone that loves flowers to do anything, is to go to the flower festivals in France, to go to the big flower festival at Chantilly, to which is in the spring, and then and also in the fall, and then the garden horticultural school at Chateau de Chaumont. I think there's so much to learn there, and there are always things going on.
Good question. Now, here's a nice practical question. I like this. How do you create a really dramatic floral table without having the arrangement block the view for your dinner guests?
That's a great question, you know, because, you know, I have a husband that's like a lot of husbands. I think he goes to the sofa and the first thing he does is take the pillows off Well, he would actually probably take the centerpiece off the table if he knew it was blocking someone. But so personally, I never understood that big explosion in the middle of the table when there's a whole table full of people, because it means the people in the middle are the only ones that really see it all night, and their view is blocked. So I like spreading the wealth all the way down the middle of the table at individual place settings or smaller arrangements like 5-inch pots down the middle. And yeah, I like to experiment. So that's what I would do. And I think we all know that the big tall arrangement in the middle of the table is a big no-no.
Yeah. But we're all drawn to it somehow. We still
And I hate saying no. I will say that. I hate saying no, but that is one of them.
Okay. Someone's wondering if you're going to open another retail space in the future.
Oh my God. Life is
for it. Lots of people wondering if that's
life is too short. Life is too short. But I will say this. I do think I have merchant blood. I've always joked about that. I love the hunt. I love finding beautiful things. I love seeing the smile on someone else's face when they walk out with it. I get huge satisfaction from that. But, never say never either. So who knows?
So I have a question for my daughter, millennials. If you're living in the city and you're on a budget, but you want to have flowers in your life, what would you advise for young people just sort of starting out?
I think people in New York are the luckiest because you can walk around any corner and see an outdoor market and buy a small bunch of tulips for $4.99. You can go to the flower district in New York and the world is your oyster down there. You can buy a single blossom if you want. So I think when you want to do something bad enough, you figure it out. But I go back to one of the chapters in the book that a single blossom is an arrangement.
I think that's a good lesson. That's a good lesson. And a couple of people have asked what your favorite flower is. Is there a flower you can't live without? Is there something you're always drawn to?
No, I go back to the seasons. Okay. I'm in East Hampton now. I haven't walked around my garden since I got here. I know I see a lot of things blooming. I've got to go out and, talk to them. So it really is what's happening now. That's what's really exciting to see what's coming up. There's a real thrill to seeing the snowdrops in the winter and the hellebores. And now I see my fruit trees, or some of them are blossoming. There's huge sense of gratification in all that. So I would say I just go with the seasons. But nothing beats rose season. Nothing beats rose season. Nothing beats it. I want to be out there 24 hours just being in the middle of them all.
Terrific. So, Margot, I'm going to shoot you a question. Can you tell us a little bit about your book? We've talked a lot about Charlotte's book. People are asking about your book that came out, I guess, a year ago or so. You want to give it a nice pitch?
Sure, I love to pitch my book. One of the best things about Living Floral is that my dear friend Charlotte Moss wrote the foreword. And I read it every now and then because it's just lovely. But it's another book about, I think, inspiration and education, and it's chapters. Each chapter is bite-sized, and it's people that it's designers, chefs, floral designers, architects, just different people across the country, and how they live, entertain, and decorate with flowers, whether it's a big dinner party or somebody who loves having flowers, papier peint on their dining room wall, or, it's just a little bit of flower love everywhere and how to do it. There are tips at the end of every chapter. And then at the end of the book are 5 beautiful how-tos. So step-by-steps from Mimi Brown, who is in New York and is doing events up there, but she started with us in Birmingham. So is that good? Is that enough?
That's actually a great plug and wonderful. And again, I'm just going to bring everyone to the chat box to encourage anyone watching today to help independent bookstores and think about buying the book. The time is, it's perfect as spring blooms and everyone's walking through their gardens for a little beauty and inspiration. So you'll see all the links bringing us right to all the RJ's bookstores. So please think about purchasing the book. We've got a couple more questions, and this I can relate to. So there's someone who runs a garden club in Chappaqua, and everyone's afraid. And I know that even for me personally, and I live in Madison, the garden club, you know, if you're new and you don't know anything, what's your tip on how to sort of re-enter, or how to enter and be so green, so to speak, just to dive in? And she's trying to, this woman's trying to recruit members, but people are really intimidated, especially maybe in a town like Chappaqua. For either one of you.
Margot, take it away.
Well, I happen to be in a garden club in Birmingham, and I'm always surprised that they wanted me because I'm not a gardener. That's my husband. And I just arrange whatever he grows. So, but it turns out that it's really about people that want to learn. And I think for the next generation to draw people into a garden club, I think people are really interested about conservation now, and how to grow sustainably and how to increase the life endurance of a flower, and teaching. Our garden club always has good speakers, and so I mean it's like, again, I'll go back to Charlotte's book. Being in a good garden club is educational, inspirational, and it's fun, you know. And garden clubs are anything from we get together and drink wine and talk about one book, or you know, they have very serious academic speakers, or you do a flower show. So I think to just kind of take the mystique out and the intimidation out is just, you know, to put the word out that it's fun, and it just depends on the club. But really just focusing on the, Charlotte, you look like you've got something.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that, you know, today is Earth Day, and I think that the garden clubs, like every organization and in every aspect of our lives, things evolve. And I think that a lot of people view garden clubs as being for their grandmother and, or their, you know, their mother or whatever. And they're not thinking about it for themselves. And so I do think that garden clubs have to evolve. And your whole mention of sustainability is so important, because younger generations are very, very concerned about sustainability, and they're socially responsible. I mean, I remember the first Earth Day. I was in college. I mean, I remember it vividly. You know, all of us flower children out there with our peace signs and everything else. I remember that. And, you know, that was the beginning, I think. But now I think we have to take it to another level. And I think the garden clubs have a huge opportunity there with in order to attract a younger demographic.
No, I think that's a great hook. That's a really good point, Margot, a really good hook. Absolutely. We're going to just have one more question, and then we'll probably wrap it up. Well, maybe two more. Someone's asking about silk flowers. Do you ever think they're acceptable? Do you just poo-poo them? What are you thinking about silk flowers?
Okay, whenever I answer this truthfully,
Yes.
You know, people usually draw breath.
Answer truthfully.
I think silk flowers are just fine if they make you happy.
Oh.
Just dust them off. Nothing is worse than dusty silk flowers. Treat them like they're real or something. No, I actually saw some flowers the other day that had me do a double take. I think whatever makes you happy. There are beautiful, beautiful silk flowers out there, and other faux flowers for that matter. It's about making that spot wherever you want it more beautiful. That's all. It's as simple as that.
And I think that's a beautiful place to end. No judgment, whatever makes you feel happy and brings joy in your space. I love this. Thank you so much, both Margot and Charlotte. Really, you lightened my day, and all the viewers here. Thank you for coming. Please, I don't mean to nag, but please think about buying these books. They're amazing and timely. Mother's Day is right around the corner. We have signed book plates. So thank you so much for being with us at our day.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Patty.
Delighted to do it. Bye, Margot.
Bye, Charlotte.
See you soon.
Okay.